Welcome back to our journey through time, fellow history lover. Before we delve into one of the most legendary battles of antiquity, I want to ask you for a small favor. If you enjoy these deep dives into the fascinating corners of history, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. It helps us reach more people who share our passion for the past, and it tells me you're enjoying these explorations through the great moments that shaped our world. Tonight, we're traveling back 2,500 years to witness a clash that would echo through the centuries, the Battle of Thermopylae. This is the story of how a small band of Greeks, led by the legendary Spartan King Leonidas, made their final stand against the largest army the ancient world had ever seen. From the narrow pass where geography met destiny, to the moment when East faced West in a battle that would determine the fate of Western civilization itself. Close your eyes and imagine yourself standing at the hot gates, where the mountain meets the sea, where 300 Spartans and their allies prepared to hold back the Persian tide. This is a tale of courage, sacrifice, and the moment when the course of history itself hung in the balance. The storm gathering in the east. In the year 480 CE, the greatest military machine the ancient world had ever witnessed was on the march. King Xerxes of Persia, son of the legendary Darius, had spent years preparing for this moment, the complete conquest of Greece. This was not merely another expansion of the vast Persian Empire. It was to be the ultimate test of Eastern might against Western defiance. The Persian preparations were staggering in their scope and ambition. According to the historian Herodotus, who chronicled these events, Xerxes assembled an army that ancient sources numbered in the millions, while modern scholars estimate the force at between 120,000 and 300,000 soldiers. Even by contemporary standards, this represented an overwhelming concentration of military power. The engineering marvels required for this invasion defied imagination. Xerxes ordered the construction of a double pontoon bridge across the Hellespont, connecting Asia to Europe with more than 600 ships lashed together. When storms destroyed the first bridge, the king's rage was so intense that he ordered the sea itself to be whipped 300 times and branded with hot irons as punishment. The audacity of a mortal king, attempting to discipline the forces of nature itself, speaks to the hubris that would ultimately doom this great enterprise. The Persian army was a tapestry of the empire's vast diversity. At its heart stood the Immortals, the elite guard of exactly 10,000 warriors who gave the Persian military its legendary reputation. These men, named for their constant number, maintained through immediate replacement of casualties, represented the cream of Persian nobility. They wore scale armor and carried wicker shields, spears, and the famous Persian composite bow. Behind them marched contingents from across the known world: Scythian horsemen, Median infantry, Egyptian marines, and countless others who had been swept up in the Persian tide of conquest. But this was more than mere military expansion. For Xerxes, the conquest of Greece represented the fulfillment of his destiny as the rightful ruler of the entire civilized world. His father Darius had suffered the humiliation of defeat at Marathon 10 years earlier, and now the son would complete what the father had begun. The Persian ideology of universal empire demanded that no corner of the earth remain outside the great king's domain. The defenders of the West. Against this eastern colossus stood a collection of Greek city-states that seemed almost laughably outnumbered. The Greek response to the Persian threat was neither immediate nor unanimous. Many city-states chose submission over resistance, sending the symbolic gifts of earth and water that signified their acceptance of Persian rule. Even Athens and Sparta, the two great powers of Greece, had initially responded to Persian demands with characteristic defiance. The Athenians throwing the Persian heralds into a pit, while the Spartans cast them into a well. Yet from this fragmented collection of independent cities emerged a coalition determined to preserve Greek independence. The Athenian general Themistocles proposed a strategic plan that would exploit Greece's natural advantages, hold the narrow pass of Thermopylae on land, while engaging the Persian navy at nearby Artemisium. This twin-pronged defense would force the Persians to fight on Greek terms, using geography to neutralize their numerical superiority. The Greek force that marched north to Thermopylae was small but elite. Led by King Leonidas of Sparta, the army consisted of approximately 7,000 men from various city-states. At its core were 300 Spartan hoplites, the royal guard of the Spartan king himself. These men represented the pinnacle of Greek military excellence, products of the legendary Agouge system that had forged them into living weapons from childhood. The Spartan military culture was unlike anything else in the ancient world. From age 7, Spartan boys were removed from their families and subjected to a brutal training regimen designed to create warriors without peer. They learned to endure pain, master weapons, and above all, to never retreat in battle. The Spartan code decreed that a warrior should return home with his shield, or on it. Victory or death were the only acceptable outcomes. Leonidas himself embodied this warrior ideal. According to Herodotus, he was around 60 years old at the time of Thermopylae, a veteran of decades of warfare who had only recently inherited the Spartan throne. His selection of the 300 men who would accompany him was deliberate. Each was chosen not just for military prowess, but because he had living sons who could continue his family line. This was the selection of men who expected to die. The broader Greek army included contingents from across the Peloponnese and central Greece. 700 Thespians, 400 Thebans, and warriors from cities like Corinth, Phlius, and Mycenae joined the Spartan corps. These men represented the free citizens of their cities, farmers and craftsmen who had taken up arms to defend their homeland against foreign domination. The Hot Gates, where mountains meet the sea. The pass of Thermopylae, whose name means hot gates in reference to the nearby sulfur springs, was chosen for its remarkable defensive properties. Modern geological studies have revealed that the battlefield of 480 BCE was dramatically different from what visitors see today. At the time of the battle, the pass was extremely narrow. According to ancient sources, wide enough for only a single chariot to pass in some places. The geography created by tectonic forces over millennia had shaped this natural fortress. To the south rose the steep cliffs of Mount Calidroman, while to the north lay the waters of the Malian Gulf. The combination of mountain and sea created a bottleneck that no army, regardless of size, could hope to outflank by conventional means. Archaeological evidence suggests that at the time of the battle, sea levels were slightly higher than today, making the pass even narrower than in later periods. The Greeks positioned themselves at the narrowest point, where their small numbers could hold back vastly superior forces. The physics of the situation were simple. The Persians could only bring forward as many men as the width of the pass would allow, negating their numerical advantage. The Greek position was further strengthened by a stone wall that had been built across the pass in earlier times. This fortification, though partially ruined, provided additional protection for the defenders. The Greeks restored and reinforced this wall, creating a defensive line that would force the Persians to attack across broken ground and over prepared obstacles. The natural hot springs that gave the pass its name were more than mere geographical curiosities. They created an otherworldly atmosphere that the Greeks may have interpreted as divine favor. The sulfurous vapors rising from the earth could have been seen as evidence that the gods themselves were present at this crucial moment in history. The army of the great king. When the Persian host finally arrived at Thermopylae in late August 480 BCE, the sight must have been overwhelming. Herodotus describes an army so vast that it drank rivers dry and required 7 days and 7 nights to cross the Hellespont. Even accounting for the ancient historian's tendency toward dramatic exaggeration, this was clearly the largest military force assembled in the ancient world up to that point. The Persian army was organized with a sophistication that reflected centuries of imperial administration. At its heart marched the immortals, resplendent in their scale armor and carrying their distinctive wicker shields. These men were the elite of the Persian military, drawn from the nobility and trained from childhood in the arts of war. Their equipment reflected both practical needs and imperial ostentation. Bronze-tipped spears with golden counterweights for officers, silver for common soldiers, and elaborate scale armor that provided protection while allowing for mobility. The Persian tactical approach emphasized flexibility and combined arms. Their infantry was lighter than the Greek hoplites, designed for rapid movement and missile warfare rather than sustained close combat. Persian archers, famed throughout the ancient world for their skill, could rain arrows down upon enemy formations from beyond the reach of spear and sword. The Persian cavalry, though unable to operate effectively in the narrow pass, represented a devastating force that had conquered vast territories from India to Egypt. Persian logistics represented perhaps their greatest achievement. The ability to supply, transport, and coordinate such a massive force across thousands of miles demonstrated organizational capabilities that would not be matched until the Roman Empire at its height. Supply depots had been established along the route, fleets of ships carried provisions, and an army of administrators managed the complex task of keeping this war machine functioning. The diversity of the Persian forces reflected the vast scope of their empire. Contingents from dozens of subject peoples brought their own weapons, armor, and fighting techniques. Scythian mounted archers, Median infantry, Phoenician marines, and Egyptian soldiers all contributed to a military machine that seemed to represent the entire known world arrayed against the small Greek force. The first blows, testing the Greek line. For 4 days after the Persian arrival, Xerxes waited, expecting that the Greeks would surely withdraw in the face of such overwhelming odds. The great king could not conceive that such a small force would dare to stand against his mighty army. He sent reconnaissance parties to observe the Greek positions, and the reports they brought back must have seemed almost incredible. The Persian scouts reported that the Spartans were engaged in gymnastics and combing their long hair, preparing for battle as if it were a festival. This behavior, incomprehensible to the Persian mind, reflected deep cultural differences. To the Spartans, death in battle was not something to be feared, but the highest honor a warrior could achieve. Their careful preparation was not mere vanity, but a religious ritual, preparing themselves to meet the gods with dignity intact. When diplomacy failed and the Greeks refused to surrender their weapons, Xerxes ordered his forces to attack. The first Persian assault came from the Median contingent, chosen perhaps because of their reputation for ferocity. These warriors, equipped with shorter spears and lighter armor than the Greeks, advanced across the narrow pass, expecting to sweep aside the defenders through sheer numbers. The reality of combat at Thermopylae quickly became apparent. The Greek phalanx, with its overlapping shields and long spears, created a wall of bronze that the Persians could not penetrate. The discipline that had been drilled into the Greek warriors from childhood showed itself in the perfect coordination of their movements. Each man protected not only himself but his comrades, creating a collective defense that was far stronger than the sum of its parts. The narrow pass became a killing ground. Persian warriors, unable to deploy their superior numbers effectively, were forced to attack in small groups that could be easily repelled by the coordinated Greek formation. The longer Greek spears, typically 8 feet in length, allowed them to strike down their enemies before the Persians could bring their own weapons to bear. The bronze-faced shields of the Greeks turned aside arrows and thrust spears, while their armor provided protection against the lighter Persian weapons. Hour after hour, the Persians threw themselves against the Greek line, only to be repelled with heavy casualties. The bodies of the fallen began to pile up in the narrow pass, creating additional obstacles for subsequent waves of attackers. The Persian advantage in numbers had been completely negated by the terrain and the superior equipment and training of the Greek defenders. The Immortals enter the fray. As the first day of battle ended with the Persians having achieved nothing but massive casualties, Xerxes decided to commit his elite forces. The Immortals, the pride of the Persian army, were ordered to break through the Greek line where common soldiers had failed. These warriors, trained from birth and equipped with the finest weapons the Persian Empire could provide, represented the ultimate test of Greek resolve. The advance of the Immortals must have been a magnificent and terrifying sight. 10,000 of the finest warriors in the Persian Empire, moving in perfect formation, their scale armor glinting in the morning sun. These men had conquered nations and never known defeat. Their very name was intended to inspire terror in their enemies and confidence in their allies. Yet even the Immortals found themselves unable to break the Greek line. The tactical situation at Thermopylae was unlike anything they had encountered in their previous campaigns. In the open plains of Asia, their mobility and superior numbers had made them unstoppable. Here, compressed into the narrow pass, they were reduced to the same grinding infantry combat that had already proven so costly. The Greek warriors, particularly the Spartans, met the Immortals with a ferocity that matched their own. These were not the lightly armed peasant levies the Persians had faced in other conquests, but professional warriors whose entire lives had been dedicated to this moment. The Spartan training regimen had prepared them for exactly this kind of sustained, brutal combat. The clash between the Immortals and the Spartans represented more than mere military conflict. It was a confrontation between two fundamentally different approaches to warfare and life itself. The Immortals fought for their king and the glory of the Persian Empire, but the Spartans fought for their very identity as free men. To retreat or surrender would be to deny everything their culture had taught them about honor and duty.